Again, thanks everybody for coming on a Tuesday night. It is glorious out there. Thank you for taking that time. And I believe that we're going to get some pretty interesting stuff tonight because, you know, obviously we have the potential of going back out again in part or whole or optional. So I know that we've got a lot of things that we might be able to do and learn from today, especially from somebody that saw some good success in her district that she was a part of. So I hope that we can really pick her brains a little bit and get some good stuff to use. Also, if you are not following her, you are on Twitter, right, Nadine? And
Yes.
if you can throw your handle there on the chat, that'd be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, that way, if you are not following her on Twitter, excellent resource. Definitely be following her and reaching out if you know with what you are looking for, what you are needing. She definitely can point you in the right direction. Just a couple quick shameless plugs. We did see the sowelead.com address on there. Be watching that because the Google Field Day schedules will be coming out fairly soon, I believe. I know that was, we were talking about that today, and I know that's well on its way. And that will be a great resource for many of us, especially those of us that may not be as familiar with some of the Google tools. So definitely be checking that out. Definitely be checking out the ICE conference if you have not yet. We are up over, I believe we're up over 3,000 attendees now. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. And let's see. And if you are in the EVSC, be looking out for the Next Gen conference or the Next Gen professional developments. I believe that information will be coming out fairly soon as well. Just real quick, be watching your emails from me probably next week or so. I know that July is kind of a crazy month with ICE and Google Field Day and everything else that's going on in July. Next month, we have at least 2 people that we're going to bring in to talk about how to talk with students about race and inequity and injustice. And I know we have at least 2 different people, but one of those nights that we would meet is on ICE Week or the ICE conference. And so we might have to shift some things around a little bit. So be watching how we're going to schedule that out for July. Okay. We may have a slightly different schedule. I don't quite know yet what that'll look like, but I'll definitely key you in on that. Tonight, I'm just going to let Nadine kind of introduce herself and we'll just go from there. And we can start to learn some things, some tricks and tips that we might be able to use this fall. Nadine, go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
All right. I am Nadine Gilkison. I'm the District Technology Integration Specialist at Franklin Township Schools, which is located on the southeast side of Indianapolis. I've been in this role 7 going on 8 years, which is like weird to me that I've been in it this long. I am a Google certified innovator. I was part of the New York cohort from 2019. And the project that I'm currently working on is about dyslexia. So that's just me kind of in a nutshell. And I've presented at a bunch of different conferences, including ISTE, ICE, all kinds of them.
Awesome. And thank you for taking some time out and sharing what you've got for us. I know that we might be a little short tonight, guys. We might not go the full hour tonight, and that is fine. We definitely can. We'll definitely take all the time that we need. But Nadine may not be up for the whole hour with us. But let's go ahead. Nadine, I know that we talked a lot about how some districts just did not have a lot of success stories, but you were well recommended. Franklin, everybody said they did it. They were doing well. They had a lot of success. Can you kind of give us a little bit like what made Franklin so successful during the virtual learning during the quarantine this spring?
I would say one of the things that really helped us in Franklin Township was that we did a lot of divide and conquer. Now, we had like a split model going on because just so you know some history about my district, we just recently passed that we would go one-to-one with Chromebooks for this coming year. But up until just like a month ago, our grades 6 through 12 each were bring your own device or rent a Chromebook. And then we were what I call cart saturated at the elementaries. But when COVID hit, we knew that we didn't have enough devices to send home with kids. So we actually did not send home devices during that time, unless there was a family that reached out that had a special need. And then we would make arrangements. So it was kind of a challenge for us to develop our e-learning plan. And that's kind of the reason why that I've been contacted a lot, because we were able to do it without being completely one-to-one. We actually set up a format where at the elementary level, I had a committee, and then that committee just like expanded over COVID, where we would divide up who would be doing what for the lessons. And so that we took a look at all of the pacing guides, and we knew pretty close to where everybody was at each grade level. And then we had actual like tech leads that took on the responsibility of recording some math lessons for us, because we use everyday math. And I knew that I could have had each teacher design their own, but my fear was that we weren't quite ready for that. And I will say that rolling out this fall, that now that we are truly one-to-one, each of the teachers will be doing it themselves. But I feel like this was like the ultimate gradual release model, that we had core groups of teachers. Our district has about 10,000 in it. And so I have 7 elementaries, 2 middle schools, and 1 very large high school. And so when I asked the teachers to split up who was going to do what, I would have certain individuals that would say, okay, I'm going to do the teacher videos for this week for 5th grade. I'm going to do them this week for 4th grade. And so it was literally, like I said, like this giant divide and conquer. And it was just so kind of magical, I guess. Like it worked out really well, because rather than teachers feeling overwhelmed that they had to do it all, we gave little bits and pieces, and we really did divvy up the work. And I can show some examples of what our e-learning looked like, but I don't want anybody to think by any means that ours was perfect. You know, everybody was in the trenches, and we have a list of things that we're going through to tweak. But I would say the consistency, because every kindergartner did the same e-learning package of digital lessons, every 1st grader, 2nd grader, 3rd, all the way up to 5th grade. We decided that it was more important to be consistent, knowing that every kid was getting the same material and the same content during the COVID process. And fortunately, that was kind of our model that we had for e-learning 2 years prior to COVID. And so it just basically became e-learning on steroids. It just became like a massive repeat the same cycle each week. And I'm the only person in my role for my district. And so I was pretty busy. I had like massive Zoom calls going on with every possible department. I had PD going on every Monday for teachers, but I want to give a big shout out to my related arts group, because prior to COVID, whenever we would do an e-learning day, we had everything designed in Google Slides, and the kids, and we would like condense art, music, PE, all of those things onto one slide. And then when it became COVID, then we branched out, and I needed individual lessons for all of those. So I quickly met with like the most techie music teachers in the district, art teachers in the district. And I said, I do not have enough time to meet with everybody. So I said, I'm meeting with you, and then I need you to spread the word what I need. And it was beautiful. I'll share our related arts lessons in here. And again, what I really love about it is each week when we were sending out the lessons, it might be Jill Vick, who's an art teacher at South Creek, and she's doing the video. But then next week, it's Cassandra McQueen, who's the art teacher at Adams Elementary. So everybody got a big picture of family throughout the district because we did that type of a model.
And did you already have like a PLC model, a strong PLC model in place before this hit? Okay. And were you able to kind of leverage that as well?
Uh-huh.
Awesome. As you go up through the grades and you get into the middle or in the high school grades, what did consistency look like there? Was it same stuff, or did it start to take on some of the same characteristics?
So the difference is that in our district, we use Google Classroom in kindergarten through fifth grade. In sixth grade through 12th grade, we use Canvas. And so in those, I had, double PD going on whenever I was taking care of the teachers. And what we decided to do for consistency in Canvas was we decided to have all the teachers use a template inside of Canvas. Their homepage had to include a button on the homepage that would take the families and the student directly to the e-learning. I was all about less clicks, and it had to be, very informative when it got to their e-learning. I wanted them to be able to use the Canvas tools fluently. Like Canvas has the built-in audio and video recorder. And there were certain components that I highly recommended that people use. But obviously you can't do consistency as in like you can't have every secondary teacher do the same thing. They're all vastly different. But I will give a shout out that several of our departments, I was talking to the secondary and saying, hey, this is the model that we're doing for elementary. And I really think you could do it too to help you out. And departments would have meetings and they would divide and conquer what they were going to do. Now, if you're a singleton in what you teach at a secondary level, of course, that looked a little bit different. But again, the workflow and the path, we wanted to be the same.
So just to kind of start with that, so some of the key takeaways right now are consistency and kind of divide and conquering, finding your true leaders and leaning on them, having them kind of lead smaller teams.
Yes. And I will tell you, our district won the digital learning grant for this coming year. We won it last year too. And it was kind of ironic that we won it for 2020 because I wrote the whole grant about helping teachers design better digital learning spaces and working on designing digital content. And so I was like, hey, this is perfect. So one of the things with the grant that we're working on this summer is we had said that we would have, we called it the Technovation Committee, and we're going to have reps from the different schools in the different grade levels, also in all of our secondary key places. And honestly, what they're doing this for is I'm working on a course that I want all of my teachers to go through to feel adequately prepared, especially at the elementary. Like I said, we were dividing a lot, but now that we're one-to-one, I want them to start doing more on their own. But I'm working on a course that every single teacher in the district, we want them to go through it and understand the key components of creating, great digital lessons online. But my supervisors were very cognizant of how much that I was working. And they were like, what can we do to help you? Because I can't PD everybody. Nadine can't be cloned and go everywhere. So this committee, this Technovation Committee, is actually going to go through my course either the end of June or beginning of July, because with the digital learning grant, I have stipend money to bring that group in. And I'm going to have them run the course. And then when we get closer to going back to school, then we're going to do a massive split up and divide and conquer. And they're each going to be doing smaller groups to go through the PD. So that way we can make sure that it isn't just a ginormous Google Meet or a big, a big Zoom. I feel like that we're going to get, better. I think we're going to get better results by doing it that way.
Awesome. And can you touch on a little bit? You said the word confidence there, and I really thought key. How did you guys use those small groups to build confidence in your staff and your teachers to do these kinds of things?
I have a lot of really great tech leaders at each one of my schools, even though we don't officially have this committee set up. My background is elementary based, and I tell my secondary teachers that all the time. I'm like, I go, you tell me what you need and I'm your resource person and, I can help you out. But I also like to help our teachers grow. I have several teachers in my school district that are pursuing their masters or have already achieved their masters in tech integration. And so they work very closely with me and want to gain that experience. I'll give a shout out to Jamie Ledbetter. She's at the high school. And Jamie does, Nate's nodding his head. He knows Jamie. Jamie's done a very awesome job at helping out. So like, I'll talk to those people and say, this is the PD that we're wanting to accomplish. I can't be everywhere. Would you be willing to offer, that PD at the high school in some groups? And they're more than willing to help out in that aspect. And the nice part of that too is that, like I said, I'm going on almost 8 years outside of the classroom. And so, I don't want teachers to assume that I know everything about it. And so I definitely think it's key to involve those high-tech teachers in the process. And, they are living it live and they can give me the feedback that I want and they get the buy-in at their department that is needed for this to be successful.
Awesome. Nate commented on your HyperDoc skills, and I definitely agree with the power of the HyperDocs. Could you just kind of touch on HyperDocs and why they are so effective, especially in the e-learning?
So the HyperDocs to me are really effective because, and I'll kind of back up for a moment. Gosh, it's been probably 5 or 6 years ago that I stumbled across the HyperDoc Handbook by Lisa Highfield, Kelly Hilton, and Sarah Landis. And I was going to buy something else on Amazon and then it popped up. I'm like, oh, what's this book? It looks really good. And I ended up ordering it and absolutely loved it because they were in the same boat as me. We were at that time, we weren't even one-to-one anywhere, but we were gradually moving that direction. And so I was trying to decide, how should I help my teachers design digital lessons? And when I read the book, I was like, it's like these girls are speaking to me. This is exactly what I want to do. And so the model of explore, explain, apply, create, that lends itself to great digital design. And so I began a process of rolling it out first at our elementaries. And I do a whole process where X amount of times I go to each one of the 7 elementaries and I'll say, hey, Nadine's going to come to you on this day. And who wants a model lesson? And then whoever signs up to have me come to their classroom on the day that I'm there, I ask the teacher, all right, tell me what you're doing in your curriculum that week. And then I would design a HyperDoc that would go directly with what they would be teaching in the classroom that week. And that's how I sold my teachers on HyperDocs. So a lot of people ask me like, why in the world, like, holy cow, you have so many. And I'll put in here a link because I don't think I saw it in there.
Yeah, I think Nate posted that. Yeah.
Well, I saw he put a link to the blog, but I don't think he put the Google Doc that's got all of them. So I'll throw it in here really quick.
Awesome.
I have over 50 now, and that's why a lot of people are like, holy cow, how in the world did you get so many? And the reason why I got so many is because I was out doing model lessons. And so every time I would do one, no, these are not sorted by like grade level or anything. But feel free to take a look at that. Another resource that I'm going to pop into here, because what HyperDocs helped us was that since we already had a solid foundation of HyperDocs for our students, they knew how you're supposed to be taught that model. That lent itself that when we were starting to create our e-learning templates, it's not exactly a HyperDoc, but the concept is the same. It may not have all of the pieces, but it does look very similar to that. I'm going to stick in the chat all kinds of free COVID resources that I'm sharing out that I curated that we made. Everything is from all of that divide and conquer. And inside of this free resources, I've got like a full blown template. And I've also got in here all kinds of ways that we did that divide and conquer, like the related arts is all in there. And my feeling is that I really feel for the people, and not even necessarily in Indiana, but I feel for the folks that do not have someone in our job. If there's not a district that has someone in my position, I feel bad for them. And so I try to share as much as possible and help as many teachers as possible because of that. So I like that philosophy, and that's why I've been willing to share, you know, all the e-learning templates, everything that our district made. For we use guided reading at the elementary level. If you tap on the resource that says guided reading, it's got over 35, I think, lessons. And the biggest thing that I noticed that I could do to help our teachers was not only the template, but sometimes just curating and finding the things that you need. I would tell them to, you know, tell me what you want, and I would try to assist along the way, you know, and play that instructional designer on the side to kind of help people out.
And if you're not familiar with the hyperdoc is like one landing page, right? Everything, all the resources, all the materials, all the instructions, it's all formulated and kind of laid out. I'm going to just
It's a way to package your lessons. And at the time, whenever they wrote the book at the beginning, it was really meant for Google Docs. That's why they got the HyperDocs term. But since then, it has expanded since the book originally was written. And at that time, then, you know, it branched out to Google Slides. I've seen people use Google Maps, all kinds of things. And so, and so with that, you know, there's not one set format that you need to use. I personally like to build mine in Google Slides because I can actually add in there the videos. Again, I like
Mhm.
less clicks, and we
Yeah.
felt like that we could package everything and keep everything within Google Slides. Now, if there are some people that are Canvas users, or you have a different LMS, a common question I was getting in our secondary was, man, I love the concept of HyperDocs, but how do I do it? You know, because we're not using Google Classroom, and, you know, does this mean I can't use the slides or whatnot? And and recently with Jamie Ledbetter, she and I actually created, if you use Canvas, or if anybody out here that's watching does, we created in Canvas Commons a HyperDoc template in Canvas Commons that you can use. And just showing you the process. I mean, in any LMS, as long as you can embed the Google Slides and put a link to it, then it doesn't matter what platform that you have. You can do these on any type of platform.
Awesome. And definitely take a look at those. I know that they are very colorful and graphic. They don't have to be quite that, but they are definitely they're very handy. And once you get used to them, and I think you're really going to fall in love with a lot of those. Nadine, you said that you guys started thinking about some tweaks and stuff. What are some things that you're like, now that you've had a chance to kind of stop and take a look at things? Where did you see like, okay, let's not do that again, or let's build on this, or what could we do differently?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I can say this because I'm sure every district has this. I wish I could say wholeheartedly that every single teacher in the district went above and beyond. However, you know, I could see the backside of things and know that we have to make sure that everyone is held accountable, and that just sending the lesson out to families is not enough, and making sure the checks and balances, I guess, if that makes sense. And I hate to say
Mhm.
that, because we all know that it's not that I'm talking about a majority, I'm talking about a minority. And but I'm very big on, you know, if these are the expectations, then everybody has to do it.
Mhm.
So, for instance, when COVID got started, like if someone would reach out to me to ask me a question about Canvas, of course, I can go into their course and take a look. And then we would start to notice some things that were missing, that weren't there. And like I said, there's only one of me. And so we began a process, and I'm not saying these things because we were trying to catch teachers. What it was a checks and balances. You know, you have to have accountability to make sure that everybody is meeting the needs of the students. And if there is something going on, you know, at their home as to why that they can't take care of those things, we need to know that too. Because I always tell everyone to design with the community in mind. You know, we had to work through tweaks. You know, we decided to go with Zoom during COVID. And the reason why was because Google Meet was having issues at the very beginning. And then we started training on Zoom, and everybody knows that Zoom was having issues too. But it's just that learning curve of understanding. You know, I would get teachers that would say, "Oh, this happened," and I'm like, "Okay, we got to make sure that you did do the things that I mentioned to have set up." And you know, I mean, when you're on the fly, then you're always going to have, you know, those types of issues. So we're cleaning up those things. I've been trying to make teachers aware. You know, we all know that every ed tech company had everything for free under the sun. And, you know, as much as what I tried to tell everybody, you know, be cautious, be cautious. I've had some people asking me to buy them things now. And I'm like, you know, we can't do that. You know, I had someone that asked for a quote of something just for a school-wide license, and it was $6,000 alone. And I'm like, you know, this is why I'm all about free.
Yeah, definitely so. Julie wanted to know what kind of resources, or were there resources that you guys shared out universally to parents, or some
Yes.
sort of place for parents?
Yeah, on our district website, we have a whole section. We had a whole section for e-learning, but then COVID became, you know, that entity all its own. And so then we had an entire, you know, dedication area to COVID in its place. I was going to throw in here too. Let me go back over here. I'm going to throw a link in here that I had so many people asking how we rolled out our e-learning that I finally just dropped it all into a Weebly site. So it just says FT eLearn. I started it when we were just doing flat out e-learning, but then when it went into COVID, I just added a different tab. So, and I am like completely transparent on that thing. I took screenshots of like every email I was sending out to teachers. So if people want to take a look at any of that, again, that's so that I can help others as they're trying to work through that. So it said, what kind of feedback did you receive from families during the virtual learning? And I'm glad that someone asked that. So we sent out a survey to our families probably about halfway through COVID, because I was like, I don't want to wait until the end. I need to know now. Yeah. And so we did, and we had over 90% say that they were happy with how we were doing. And I was like shocked. I thought it was going to be, you know, a vast majority. Of course, me, I look at I don't look at the 90%. I look at the people that weren't happy and why were you not happy? And I can take it, you know, I've got thick skin. You know, it's interesting because, you know, we all talk about digital equity and all of those types of things. But one of the interesting things out of this, I am going to attach, I'm going to attach another link in there. And John, is it possible for me to share my screen, or?
Yeah, you should be able to share. Okay.
I just put a link in here, but I'm going to share my screen so that way you guys can see me talking about some of these. So on here, as COVID was going on, I told you that we had to design, you know, with any device that they were using at home. Well, when it was just traditional e-learning and not COVID, we had always told those people that were on a smartphone that they could just do the lessons paper pencil. And I knew that wasn't going to cut it when we were trying to do several weeks. So it dawned on me, because we were using Google Slides, I started to think to myself, oh my gosh, in Google Sites, it's optimized for a smartphone. So I could actually pull, since we were doing common lessons, I'll show you this one here, April 6th through the 10th. Yes, the teachers were putting things in Google Classroom. So I don't want you to think that they weren't. But I was trying to think of every scenario, and I didn't want a parent to say, we can't find it, we couldn't find the lesson. So what we did instead was, I have on here a link to the paper pencil packet, because we did have a pickup, but I wanted to think about, what if they missed the pickup and they still need the paper pencil? So there's a link to the paper pencil right here. And the parents can also see the e-learning for every grade, all in one location for that week. Look, I got 4 kids. You know, these families are a lot of families are gonna have more than one kid at that elementary level. And so again, we were trying to make it easier. And another reason why I liked Google Slides was that not only could I optimize it for a smartphone, but and we found out that if they had to use their own device at home, that we had a higher percentage that was using a Kindle Fire tablet at home. And so I had to make sure that it would work on that. And if you save Google Slides as a PDF, then it works fine on a Kindle Fire tablet. I always tell people the funny story that I actually went to Best Buy and pulled up what our e-learning looked like on a bunch of different devices, so that I was trying to be as prepared for the families as what I could be.
One of the things, I'm sorry, somebody had a question.
Oh, I don't see it. Hold on.
Do you have any information handy? I know we've talked a lot about access and just people not having internet access and stuff. Do you know kind of roughly what your district's access was, like?
Yeah, when we had already done the access survey before, when we started e-learning, and because at that point we weren't sure if we were going to be equipped to do e-learning, and surprisingly we found out that it was over 90% that had internet. Now, I say they have internet access, but the quality is what we did change. When you asked about what we tweaked, Tyler Knight is the head of our IT, and Tyler just recently changed our student registration form. And so now we don't just ask, do you have Wi-Fi? What we say is, what's the quality of your Wi-Fi? And he has like a scale, like a rating scale that people put on there. So that way we have a better reflection of knowing exactly the quality of it. And we also have access to hotspots coming up for this fall if someone does need to check it out.
Awesome. All right. So kind of putting some pieces together here. So we talked about consistency. We talked about divide and conquer, getting your leaders together and kind of, sharing out the workload. We talked about that confidence, and then, kind of redundancy, or just making sure you knew what things were going to look like once they went out. When you think about that feedback, what's something that you learned from the parents that you're like, okay, yeah, that's something definitely we need to address either now or is in the fall?
I'm trying to think of what the top one was. I will tell you that the parents that were the most concerned are our reach parents, which would be like our high ability. Like if their student just qualified for the program and then they're starting the program in the fall, they were like, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to be prepared, and all of that. And so I know that our high ability coordinator, she had meetings with the families, and they actually had like a summer transition plan in place to make sure that they knew that they were going to be, adequately prepared with going back. Because again, once you enter that program, it's like they're skipping a grade level. So I could see why that the parents would be, concerned about that.
As you looked out across your staff, your faculty, what was something that you noticed? Maybe it wasn't verbalized, but something you noticed like, okay, this is something we might need to address. You know, you've got all these plans, redundancies, and small teams, and you've got some plans in place. Was there something that you kind of started to see was kind of an issue that maybe we need to address a little bit with teachers?
Um, Honestly, it would be, the teacher expectations. We're taking a look at those, and we're not wanting to be completely hard on everybody, but I felt like that, we were doing the best that we could in the spring, but we want to be a lot more clear about what the teacher expectations are. And again, it's not the majority. It was just, we had some folks that unfortunately that did not do everything that they needed to do, if that makes sense.
Was it because they didn't want it? It wasn't that they didn't want to. Was it they weren't prepared for it, or they just didn't feel confident in doing it, or they just blew it off?
All of it.
Oh yeah,
It just
right.
depended upon you can't make everybody happy.
Mhm.
And we would find out about things. And so that's what, I mean, I can't say enough, the whole checks and balances thing. Actually, the thing on the parent feedback that tipped me off bigger than anything was that we had parents telling us, hey, I've got 2 kids or 3 kids in this school, and one teacher is sending out the slides, offering X amount of Zoom chats, and offered a optional book club and all these other cool optional things, while my other child's teachers sent out the slide deck and we haven't heard from them all week.
Mhm.
So does that kind of
Yeah.
give you a picture? And
Mhm.
that's and so that's the kind of part that I want to make sure that everybody is, we're helping you out a lot with it, with our e-learning, but I want to make sure that some folks aren't taking advantage of it. I went in and I taught our assistant principals. I taught them in Canvas at the secondary level how to go in as an admin, and they divided up and took departments. So that way they weren't checking every day, but they were routinely just going in to make sure that people put in work and that kind of a thing. And then we have admin interns at our elementary level. And for those folks, I taught them how to go into Google Classroom, and if a parent's saying that no one's responding, how to respond to people for that.
Awesome.
And I'm
And that goes
actually
back to
feeling okay, John,
consistency.
if you want to keep going.
Oh no, okay. Well, that just goes back to consistency, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and expectations. Julie wanted to know, what did you have any issues with kids just not doing the e-learning, and how did you address that?
Of course, I mean, we're not, like I said, we're not perfect. And, that's one of the big things that we're really talking about going back this fall, because we had to be conscious of that digital equity gap, and not knowing the quality of the Wi-Fi and everything. And I had to explain to our secondary, you're 1-to-1, but the elementary is not. And so the device that got sent home for secondary, some like 2 or 3 brother and sister may have to use it for the elementary lessons.
Mhm.
So we had to be very cognizant about the type of work that we were giving. But I know, especially at the secondary level, it got, frustrating if, and that was statewide, I mean, if you can't give grades, per se, like, how the state said those guidelines of, your grade can go up, but they didn't want it to go down. I can tell you for sure that that's a thing that our secondary folks are especially worried about going back into the fall, and how do we ramp up the accountability? And I told
Mhm.
them, I said, actually, we're at a better level playing field now, because before we were not equitable. And now that our school board, this sounds bad, but I always tell everybody, I mean, it took COVID for us to become 1-to-1, but so be it. I mean, I got what I wanted. And so we're 1-to-1 now, and they're going to provide hotspots. And I said, quite honestly, you can be more rigorous about what, telling the kids, you have to get this done. We've given you a hotspot. If you don't have quality Wi-Fi, we've given you a device. Every single kid has a device now.
Mhm.
So we've eliminated those what if.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's definitely something that, that we're continuously working on.
No, understand. And again, that goes back to that kind of consistency, that kind of having a plan in place, right? That here's our
Mhm.
expectations, here's what we expect to see, what we want to see, here's how we're going to deliver that, and then off we go, right? What
Right.
about the kids? What kind of feedback did you get from students?
I'm trying to remember now. It's been a little bit since I've looked at it. I mean, the students, you got a wide range. Some of them said, that it was too much work. Others said it wasn't enough work. Um, for the most part, honestly, at the elementary level, for the most part, the kids were fine with the amount of work. At the secondary level, that was where I was wanting us to be mindful. And I think by us building this course of what we want every teacher to know going into the fall, I call it like having your foundations for distance learning. Then I feel like that everybody has a better understanding of knowing that you can't just keep putting the same lesson out there. And I do have to give a shout out to my secondary teachers because I had several, like we offered, Nadine did, optional PD every Monday, which I kind of laughed at my supervisors. They'd already let everybody in the district know. And typically on Mondays, I do secondary PD and Tuesdays, I do elementary. Well, when they sent out the memo, it was, hey, Nadine's going to offer optional PD all day Monday. And I was like, what? You guys, I'm trying to cover everybody. And so I actually ended up starting a YouTube channel, not because I'm trying to become some YouTube star, but I was posting on Twitter the PD schedule that I was going to do for my teachers, and I had a bunch of people asking, "Hey, can I come to your PD?" And I was like, "Well, let me figure out a way to do that." So it actually worked out better because on those Mondays, I used StreamYard to do my PD, and it would record it as I was doing my PD. And then our teachers could get PGPs. I've got teachers watching my YouTube PD right now, and they're getting PGPs over the summer. So it was just a nice way for me to continue it and not feel like that I had to ramp it up constantly. It was just a nice outlet for me to do that.
Awesome. So if we start to kind of, as you start to kind of take the broad look at this, if you kind of back out a little bit, that 3,000 foot view or so, what are some of the what would you say is like the takeaway when someone else is like, well, we made it through the spring, we're good. What's that piece of advice that you pass on to them, be it a teacher, a school district?
I would say more often than not, the advice that I give is the divide and conquer and use a template. Manage your workflow and uh, I've noticed that a lot of school districts that when I was doing the consultant work for the IDOE with the Office of eLearning, I would get phone calls sometimes from other districts, and the first question I would ask was, "What's your LMS? What are you using?" And like I told you, we use two. We use Google Classroom and Canvas. But I remember a phone call that I did, and someone said, "Oh, well, we let the teachers choose," and I was like, "Whoa." And they were like, our community is a little
Oh,
upset, and I'm trying to figure out why. And I'm like, that would be why. Because I know it sounds
that's a
great.
good read right there.
It sounds great at a teacher level, but I always have to explain to people, when we sit at central office and we have that umbrella view, I'm like, we're trying to make decisions as to what's best for the community. And you need to have either a designated split like we do, Google Classroom, Canvas, or one LMS for the whole thing to give you more consistency because the workflow has to be consistent for the families. And those are the kinds of things that our parents liked. That they said, when we got on Google Classroom, for instance, we told every teacher that they had to have a topic on classwork that said e-learning, and it was at the very top of classwork. We told them that on their Google Classroom header, they had to have an arrow that was pointing to the word classwork. Everybody had to have it because, again, I need to know, where am I supposed to find my work? I wanted it to be, I'm all about proactive. I tried to think of every possible scenario that a parent might say, oh, I couldn't find this, or what if? And then I would, plan on that basis. One thing that I was going to share when I talked about the foundations, this is a document. It is not done. I'll just tell you now. This document is what I'm working on to go along with the course that I'm building for our teachers. This one's googly. And then I've got one that's like Google/Canvas that I'm still working on. But if you guys want to take a look at it, it's the last doc that I just added. And it says Foundations for Distance Learning. Because what I started to think of was, what are all of the skills? What are all the things that I want my teachers to know how to do? And not overwhelm them. So I tried to think of all of the little tidbits of things that I would know that I would have to teach them. And what I'm working on right now is linking those out to YouTube videos that I've either already made, or finding links to things that can help them out. And again, I know, like, for instance, if you're looking at that doc, it's got a bunch listed for check for understanding and interactive content. There's a boatload more that I could have put, but I think there is that fine line of too much. It's just so overwhelming, especially to someone who's not techie. So I tried to put the big hitters in there. And I also wanted to be upfront if it's got a free version and a paid version. So I'm trying to indicate those kind of as I go. So that thing's a work in progress, but if anybody likes it and they want to, like, make a copy of it and kind of tweak it for their district, you're welcome to use that as well.
As you kind of think, and again, your job is, obviously working directly with teachers. What do you think is the driving principle or the driving force behind some of the things that you are trying to get teachers to do? Is it the student who's the end user? Is it the parent that is going to be assisting or overseeing it? Is it the teacher who's creating that? And again, I know all those go into it, but what do you think is the driving factor with some of this?
I always think about the student interface. Like, what is it that the student's going to see? And what is that experience going to look like? And I'm also trying to make sure that people realize that it doesn't have to look the same every week. I was really happy when I offered those optional PDs that I also had some office hours. And I had some teachers at my secondary level that reached out and said, what else have you got? Like, I've already been doing this tool and I don't want to keep doing it every week. I know that's boring for the kids. What else have you got? What else could I do? And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I've been trying to get them to do this and now they're all for it. And so, being cognizant of that and designing engaging things that I know that kids are going to want to interact with. Because if it's just the standard, regular, text type of lesson, I know that the percentage of kids that are going to complete the lesson is going to drop off even more.
Awesome. So let's kind of wrap things up and let's put a big bow on it here. How would you, obviously you're getting a lot of requests, to talk about this, us, other people, teachers, admins, how do you wrap this up? Where do you, what's the kind of parting shot, if you will?
So, really commonly what I start to tell people when I wrap up my presentations on this topic is my best advice for people, and teachers especially, to get ready for whatever fall is going to look like, because we're all waiting on all of these plans and everybody wants to go ahead and get started on working on things. So my biggest piece of advice that people can take away is have your teachers look at their curriculum guide or pacing guide, look at it now and determine, look at the first 9 weeks and determine what has to be done face-to-face. Like, it's really hard to do it in a virtual environment, and kind of indicate that on their curriculum map. And then earmark the things that lend themselves to being digital And that way you can go ahead, and curating is what takes the longest. So I was working with a group of teachers today from Elwood, and I said, it doesn't need to be pretty in the beginning. Just slap it, get out a Google Doc, get out a Google Slide. And, for instance, if I'm using that explore, apply, and extend model, I know what I would normally be teaching that first 9 weeks. And I can go ahead and start dumping content into slide decks or dumping it into a doc. And then I can go back and clean it up later. And that seems to resonate really well with teachers, that they like that advice.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody got any parting questions or parting shots, thoughts before we start wrapping things up?
It's going to say, I don't bite. You can talk.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I tell you what, then I'll go ahead and Julie says you're amazing. Thank you. Hey, I do want to thank you for joining us tonight. I know that you weren't feeling great, and I appreciate you taking the time out. And I know you're busy, and I know it's kind of a crazy time for you, so I definitely appreciate that. Definitely, guys, make sure that you're following her and you're reaching out. And don't forget, I think JD, if you're still on there, he's going to throw in the link to the feedback form so that you can get your PGP points. And if you are looking for some of those, you'll get that. Nadine, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Enjoy what's left of your Tuesday evening. See ya.